How you doing there? Friends? Whew. Alright, welcome back to Babylon Talmud. Today we're studying Daf Chof Tes. Does Daf Chof Tes ring a bell for anybody? I've been saying, if anybody tells you that the first Daf of Masechta Sotah is hard, you tell them Daf Chof Tes is much harder. Just, we're not even going to do the whole Daf Chof Tes today because I wussed out and I said I couldn't do it, so we're going to have to do a bunch of it tomorrow, and then we're going to have to do not Pashit, friends, not Pashit, Tuma and Tyre, not Pashit. Also, it's not Pashit, it's already late at night, and I didn't sleep much last night. That's also going to be interesting. I was at a chasana last night. I lost my voice a little bit, but not for the reasons that you might be thinking. I wasn't having a good time or anything. I was trying to learn with the guy next to me, and it was so loud that I had to yell. So I was straining myself. I was learning with Reb David Weinberg. You guys know Reb David Weinberg? Someone's making noise outside. You guys know Reb David Weinberg? Well, for better or for worse, he sat next. Better for me, better for worse for him. He sat next to me, pulled out my Gemara, and I said, "No, this is what we're gonna do." He was a good sport about it. Yeah. Let's go weiter. Alright, I'm telling you, see me at a wedding, you stay away. Alright, let's go. Alright, but it was good. We learned an Amud of Gemara. That was good. Alright. Here we go. So we're going to start in Daf Chof Ches Amud Beis, 2 lines from the bottom. 3 lines from the bottom? 3 lines from the bottom. Man, Babylon? 1 second, let me consider Babylon, 1 sec. Alright, here we go. 3 lines from the bottom of Daf Chof Ches Amud Beis. Verb Yishmael, Rabbi Akiva Truma Mahadu Le'yu Kehuna. Ho, 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 ho. Do, 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 do. Boop, boop, boop. Do, 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 do. Boop, boop, boop. Okay, friends, we gotta go slow in this stuff. Take out your brains. Everyone take a second, take out your brains. Okay. Yesterday we had said that it says, hopefully the people outside are going to be quiet, because if I can't focus, you're going to hear a lot of whining. Alright. Now, yesterday we had said that it says Tumah 3 times. It says Nitma, Nitma, V'nitma. So Rabbi Akiva had said one is to say that the Sotah is asura to the Baal, the other is for the Boel, and the third is for Truma, that she's not allowed to eat Truma. That, even if she gets divorced, right, normally a woman, a Bas Kohen, if she gets divorced and she goes back home and she doesn't have any kids, she can eat Truma. If she's a Sotah, she cannot eat Truma. Now, Rabbi Shmuel responds to Rabbi Akiva, and he says, we don't need a pasuk for kehuna, because we can learn that out from a Kal V'chomer. So it's interesting that Rabbi Akiva from the third V'nitma, he learned out Truma, and Rabbi Shmuel doesn't say we don't need a pasuk for Truma, we can learn it out. He says we don't need a pasuk for kehuna. So the Gemara says Rabbi Akiva is not talking about kehuna, he's talking about Truma. Why are you, Rabbi Shmuel, talking about kehuna? What's kehuna? Kehuna is that if her husband dies, she'd be unable to marry a kohen. Right? Normally a widow can marry a kohen, but she would be unable to marry a kohen because she's a sotah. So Rabbi Shmuel says we don't need a pasuk for kehuna, because we can learn it out from a Kal V'chomer, right? We said that if a grusha who's allowed to eat truma, right, if you have a Bas Kohen, she gets divorced, she can go back home and eat truma if she doesn't have any kids. Yet she's not allowed to marry a kohen, right? Because a grusha is not allowed to marry a kohen. So then, certainly, a sotah who's not allowed to eat truma would be unable to marry a kohen. So Rabbi Shmuel says, we know that from a Kal V'chomer, I don't need the pasuk to teach you. So the Gemara says, for Rabbi Shmuel, Amar Rabbi Akiva truma, u'mahader le iu kehune. According to Rabbi Shmuel, I don't understand. Rabbi Akiva never said anything about kehuna. Rabbi Akiva said from the third nitma we learn out truma. And then Rabbi Shmuel says we don't need a pasuk for kehuna. Nobody said anything about kehuna. V'su and more so, Rabbi Akiva, kihuna minole. How does Rabbi Akiva know that she's asur likihuna? He's only learning out Baal, Boil, and Truma. How does Rabbi Akiva know that she's asura to the kahuna? And it can't be that he learns it out from the Kal V'chomer, because then he's saying the same thing as Rabbi Shmuel. So v'chitemo kihuna lo tzricha kra. So maybe you'll suggest, well, kihuna doesn't need a pasuk. Rabbi Akiva doesn't need a pasuk for kihuna. He's got, right, the three nidmas, Baal, Boil, Truma. He doesn't need a pasuk for kihuna. How come? Shari also ba safek zona kizona. Because when it comes to Sotah, we're treating her, we don't know, did she have an affair, didn't she have an affair, we don't know. It's a suffix, but we're treating it as a vada. She's asur to her husband. She can't eat truma, right, things like that. We're treating this suffix situation as if it's a vada, as if she definitely had an affair. So if you say that she can't marry a kohen, that I know it logically that she can't marry a kohen because we're treating suffix zona kizona, but then say the same thing by truma. I shouldn't then need a pasuk for truma either. I shouldn't need the third nitma to teach me that she's not lady truma, because truma nami lo tiba ikra shari osaba suffix zona kizona. Right? The pasuk says, I don't know if I'm saying it, quoting it properly, but v'isha kisiya leish zar hi b'trumas hakachim lo sochel, something like that. That if you have a bas kohen who has a forbidden relationship, she becomes a halala, she can no longer eat truma. So if you're saying that I don't need a pasuk for kahuna because I could learn it out from the fact that we're treating a sotah as a vadai zona, and she's not allowed to marry a kohen. But if that's your reason, well then I should say the same thing by truma. I shouldn't need a pasuk by truma. If she had a forbidden relationship, she wouldn't be allowed to eat truma either, and yet we do have a pasuk for truma. That according to Rabbi Akiva, as we learned yesterday, he darshins the extra vav, and therefore these nitmas are nitmea v'nitmea. So and according to Rabbi Akiva, who darshins the vav, so then it's not just 3 nitmas, it's 4 nitmas. So once you have 4, so then chad lebal, v'chad leboel, v'chad lekehuna, v'chad letruma. So actually Rabbi Akiva has 4 psukim available to him. So he learns about Baal, Boel, Truma, as well as Kehuna. Rabbi Yishmael, Tlasa Kroi Ksive. And Rabbi Yishmael, he has 3 psukim. He doesn't hold of the riboy of the vav. So you have the 3 nitmas. So chad lebal, v'chad leboel. So of course one is for the Baal, one's for the Boel. V'chad letruma. And the third one is to say that she's asura to eat trumeh. V'kihuna asur b'kal v'chomer, and the kihuna comes from that kal v'chomer that we had mentioned earlier, right? That if a grusha who's allowed to eat truma is not allowed to marry a kohen, so then certainly a sotah who's not allowed to eat truma is not allowed to marry a kohen. Rabbi Shmuel mimayde itzrich kra letrumeh. But now according to Rabbi Shmuel, who only has 3 psukim available to him, so how come the third nitmea is to say that she's asura to eat truma, and then we learn out that she's also asura to marry a kohen from a kava chomer? But Dilma, maybe the third nitmea, ki itzrich likihuna, maybe the third nitmea is to teach that she's not allowed to marry a kohen. If her husband dies, she would be unable to marry a kohen. V'truma sharia, maybe she's allowed to eat truma. Say that the third pasuk is teaching about kihuna, that she's also the kihuna, but she's maybe allowed to eat truma. All my loch, so Rabbi Shmuel would say, mistavra dumya debal uvoil. So says, so we say, look, Rabbi Shmuel would say that it makes sense that the third nitma is going to be similar to the Baal and the Boel, right? Meaning there were 3 nitmas. One is for the Baal, she's asura to her husband. The one is for the Boel, she's asura to the person she had an affair with. So now we have a third nitma, and we have to choose. Is it coming to say that she's asura to eat truma, or that she's asura to marry a kohen? So which one is it? Truma or kahuna? So it makes sense to say that we should say that the third nitmea is the one that's similar to the first two. That's similar to the Baal and to the Boel. Ma Baal uvol mechayim, just like the husband, right? She's asura to her husband as long as he's alive, and she's asura to the Boel as long as he's alive, right? Both the Baal and the Boel are alive, and we're saying that she's asura to them. So af trume nami mechayim. So also trume, right? It's something that, if she gets divorced, and so she gets divorced, the husband's still alive, she can go back to she goes back to her father's house, but she's not able to eat truma. The afuke kehuna, as opposed to kehuna, de la'achar misa. That kehuna is memele, talking about after the husband dies, right? Meaning, because if she gets divorced from the husband, she wouldn't be able to marry a kohen anyways, not because she's a sotah, but because she's a grusha. A divorcee can't marry a kohen. So the only way that this becomes relevant, that dafka a sotah is unable to marry a kohen, would be if her husband dies, and now she's a widow, and we're saying that she's not allowed to marry a kohen. And therefore, since Baal and Boel are both alive, and we have to choose, is the third nitmah for kahuna or for truma, it makes sense to include the one that is when the husband's alive, which would be truma. And therefore, the third nitmah is for truma, and the kehuna is learned from a kal v'chomer. Rabbi Akiva dumya de Baal uvoel leisle. Now Rabbi Akiva doesn't hold of this, thing that we want to include, right? That the third nitmah should be like the first two, right? That therefore it has to be truma. And Rabbi Akiva would argue that if you only had 3 psukim, we wouldn't necessarily include truma. We might include kehuna. And therefore you need all 4 psukim to say that it's Baal, Boel, truma, and kehuna. Inami, vinami, alternatively, islay. Maybe Rabbi Akiva does hold of, that you would want the third nitmah to be similar to the first two, that it should be similar to the Baal and the Boel who are alive, and therefore the third nitmah would include truma. So therefore, why not just So why do I need all 4 psukim? So milsa da'aseh b'kavachomer torach v'kosav lakra. Because even though it is you can learn it out from a kal v'chomer, right? Meaning, even though you could theoretically say that you have these 3 psukim and then you learn akuna from a kal v'chomer, but still, even though you could have learned it from kal v'chomer, the pasuk still gave the Torah still gave a pasuk for it, and you have 4 nitmahs: Baal, Boel, truma, and kahuna. All right. So far, it hasn't been too crazy. All right. Amar Rav Gidol Amar Rav. Ho. Says Rav Gidol in the name of Rav. Davar sheyesh bo das li shoel, ve'ein bo das li shoel, me'ai kra nafko. Ho. So remember, yesterday we learned out from Sotah. At the end of the daf, we learned out from Sotah that Sotah is a davar sheyesh bo das li shoel, right? It's a suffix situation that right. So Sotah is a suffix, right? We don't know, did she have an affair? Didn't she have an affair? Now it's a davar sheyesh bo das li shoel, right? It's a human being. You can ask if they had an affair or not. And we're saying that this is something that happened in Rishus HaYochid, right, in private. And we're saying that she's considered, right, we assume that she's Tmeah. So we learn from there that when it comes to a davar sheyesh bo das li shoel, right, somebody you can ask, so suffix tuma by davar sheyesh bo das li shoel b'Rishus HaYochid in private is tameh, whereas suffix tuma by davar sheyesh bo das li shoel in Rishus HaRabim, however, would be tahor. And we also said that davar she'ein bo das li shoel, something that's inanimate, something that you cannot ask, so then whether it's in Rishus HaYochid, whether it's in Rishus HaRabim, the suffix would be tahor. Okay, fine. Now we have an alternative. So there we learned this out from Sotah, that by davar sheyesh bo das li shoel, the suffix in Rishus HaYochid is tameh, Rishus HaRabim it's tahor. By davar she'ein bo das li shoel, so then it's always tahor, meaning the suffix is always tahor, bein Rishus HaYochid, bein Rishus HaRabim. Now Rav Gidol Amar Rav, davar sheyesh bo das li shoel ve'ein bo das li shoel mehai kra nafka. Whereas Rav Gidol says the name of Rav, that this distinction between davar sheyesh bo das li shoel and davar she'ein bo das li shoel is from the following pasuk. Nothing to do with Sotah. That meat that will touch anything tameh, i.e., if it definitely touches something tameh, lo ye'achol, you can't eat it. So vaday tamehu de lo ye'achol. That if it's 100%, if it's definitely tameh, so then lo ye'achol asafek. But if you're not sure, hasafek tameh v'safek tar ye'achol. But if it's a safek tumah, you can eat it. It's okay. But ema seifa. But if we go weiter in that pasuk, it says ve'abasar kol tar yochal basar. That only if you're definitely tahor can you eat basar, can you eat meat. Vade tahor hu de yochal basar. If he's certainly tahor, if he's certainly pure, then you eat basar. Then it's okay. Hasafik tameh v'safik tar lo ye'achol. But if it's a suffix, then you cannot eat it. So in the ratio of the pasuk, the beginning of the pasuk, we're saying that if it's suffix, you can eat it. You're tahor. But now we're saying that if you're a suffix, you are tameh. Alav shmamina. So how do we understand the distinction? So it depends. Kan sheyesh bodas li shoel, kan she'en bodas li shoel. So it depends. If it's a davar sheyesh bodas li shoel, so then it's asur. If the suffix is asur. If it's davar she'en bodas li shoel, then the suffix is mutter. But we haven't yet made it this. But okay, so that distinction seems to be between whether it's davar sheyesh bodas li shoel or davar she'en bodas li shoel. But we haven't made a distinction between rishus hayachid and rishus harabim. So now v'itzdrich, so we need both Sotah as well as Rav Gidol Amarav quoting this pasuk. V'itzdrich to Rav Gidol Amarav, v'itzdrich lemigmar misotah. So we need both. We need to learn this out from Sotah as well as from Rav Gidol Amarav, the imi derav, because if we would only have from Rav Gidol Amarav, who only makes a distinction between davar sheyesh bodas li shoel and davar she'en bodas li shoel. Okay, where am I? So I would think that this distinction is whether rishus hayachid, whether rishus harabim. That no matter what, davar sheyesh bodas li shoel is always aser, and davar she'en bodas li shoel is always mutter, is always tahor. And right, I mean, if davar sheyesh bodas li shoel is always tameh, davar she'en bodas li shoel is always tahor. Regardless if it's rishus hayachid or rishus harabim, it's drich lemigmar misotah. So that is why we need to learn out from Sotah, because by Sotah it's dafka something that happens in rishus hayachid. So we understand that distinction that when we say that davar sheyesh bodas li shoel is tameh, it's dafka safek in rishus hayachid. Misotah, and if we would only have Sotah avamina adika das nogeo magia tzricha. But if we only had the case of Sotah, I would think that you need that both parties are davar sheyesh bodas li shoel, right? The man and the woman, right? They're both people you can ask. So therefore, I also need Rav Gidol Amarav. From there, we see no, it doesn't have to necessarily be that they are both, human beings, both people with das. All right. Wow. So far, I think we're doing okay. So far, I think we're doing okay. We're not so far away from, I think, where I'm going to call it quits for today. So the Gemara quotes the Mishnah that on that day, right, the day that Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah became Rosh Yeshiva, that day, so Rabbi Akiva expounded from a pasuk that a sheni latuma can make a shlishi latuma when it comes to truma. That a sheni latuma can make a shlishi latuma. So because there's the pasuk, right? Now what does the pasuk say? I don't know what the pasuk says, but the pasuk says, what does the pasuk say? I don't know what the pasuk says. No, where's the pasuk? Oh. If you have, I went back to the Mishnah to find the pasuk. If you have an earthenware vessel, that a dead sheretz falls into the airspace of a klicheres, so then the klicheres now becomes right. So the sheretz is an avatuma, the klicheres becomes a rishon latuma. So any food in the oven will become tameh. right? So the sheretz is na'ava tumah, the oven becomes a rishon l'tumah, and the food in the oven becomes a sheni l'tumah. But the pasuk doesn't say, apostle, it says yitma. Yitma means l'tamei acherim, that it doesn't stop there, but the food can actually be metamei a shlishi as well. So now, so Rabbi Akiva learned it out from that pasuk, to which Rabbi Yoshua ben Chananya says, wow, I wish that my Rebbe, Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, could have seen this drasha from Rabbi Akiva, because Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai always said that the future generations are going to forget about this halacha, that the sheni can make a shlishi, because there's no pasuk for it. But Rabbi Yeshua says, look, Rabbi Akiva found the pasuk for it. Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, look, Rabbi Akiva found the pasuk for it. So, effectively, Gemara me'achar de'ein lama tomei. So the Gemara asks, if Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai didn't have a pasuk for it, Rabbi Akiva found the pasuk for it later, but Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai didn't have a pasuk for it. So if he didn't have a pasuk for it, so then why did he say that there was a shlishi? Why did he say that a sheni can make a shlishi if there's no pasuk for it? Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai would always say a sheni can make a shlishi, but I don't have a pasuk for it. Because I don't have a pasuk for it, the future generations are going to mess up. And it says Rabbi Yoshua, I'm so happy that Rabbi Akiva found the pasuk for it. But if Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai didn't have a pasuk for it, then why would he think that that a sheni can make a shlishi to begin with? So Amar Yehuda Amar Rab Min HaTorah ein lo. So the Gemara, so Rabbi Yehuda Amar Rab says, look, Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai did not have a pasuk for it. That's true, but midin kal v'chomer yeshlo. But he was able to prove it logically. What's that? Well, umatvul yom shemuter b'chulin. That a tvul yom is allowed to eat chulin, of course. So there's different kinds of tvul yoms as we're about to see. Okay, so let's just say he was a zav. Let's just say he was a zav, and he's no longer a zav. And on the last day, when he becomes when he becomes pure, he waits 7 days, doesn't say Ziva. So then he goes to the mikveh, and then after he goes to the mikveh, he's a tvul yom for the rest of the day. He can't eat truma, but he can eat chulin. But posel b'truma, but he's not allowed to eat truma. A tvul yom, right, until the nighttime. First daf in all of Shas. That until the nighttime, he cannot eat truma. So you have a tvul yom who's allowed to eat chulin, but he's not allowed to eat. I'm sorry. He's what? Yeah. What? Well, yeah. What? Yeah, he's not allowed to eat truma. That's correct, but that's not what the Gemara is saying. Right? Tvul yom shemuter b'chulin, he's allowed to eat chulin posel b'truma. If he touches truma, it becomes a shlishi, right? If a tvul yom touches truma, it becomes a shlishi. So here we have a tvul yom. I assume that that's what it's saying. Meaning, I know that that's what it's saying, that a tvul yom can make a shlishi. But I assume that when it says posel b'truma, I think it means that that he makes. One second, I'm just looking at Rashi for a second. Oh, wait, it's not talking about. Oh, interesting. Oh, interesting. Okay. Oh, interesting. Okay. Seder. Okay, fine. So I think it is saying that it's possible truma that he's not allowed to eat truma. He's not allowed to eat truma. But I think also if he touches truma, I do think he makes it a shlishi. But anyways, so a tvul yom who's mutter to eat chulin, but he's not allowed to eat truma, right? He's possible truma. Kikar sheni, this sheni l'tuma. Shepasul b'chulin, that when it comes to chulin, it's pasul. So what does that mean? It means that it can't make any more chulin tamei, right? If you have food that is a rishon l'tumah, it's chulin. If you have chulin that's a rishon l'tumah, so if it touches other chulin, that chulin becomes a sheni l'tumah. But once it's a sheni l'tumah, it's pasul. It can't make any other chulin tamei. So therefore, if food is more stringent in that already, if sheni, which is chulin, is more stringent in that it's possible it can't make any other chulin tameh anymore, well, certainly then it would be able to make truma possible, right? Meaning, if you have a tvul yom who's mutter bechulin, and yet he's possible b'truma, posel b'truma, so then certainly a kikar sheni, right? This food that's chulin, that chulin that's a sheni is possible bechulin, right? It can no longer make any other chulin possible. So then certainly it should be mitame, it should be posel truma. Okay? Right, so kikar sheni she'posel b'chulin, so kikar sheni which by chulin is posel, so then enudin shi'ais a shlishi b'truma, so then certainly it should be able to make a shlishi b'truma. Now, of course, there's a distinction between tuma, right, posel versus tame, right? Something that's tame could then transfer, right, can pass on, can then contaminate other things. If it's tameh, it can be metame other things. If it's posel, it means that it itself is posel, but it can't be metame anything else. So when we say that food that's a sheni is posel bechulin, it means that it can't be metame any other chulin. Okay. Fine. So enudin shi'aise shlishi b'truma, right? So if you have this food that is possible, right, food that's a sheni, that's possible by chulin, certainly it should be able to make a shlishi by truma. Ikal mifrach, but you can ask, 1 second. Sure, a tvul yom is posel b'truma, but I understand why a tvul yom would be posel b'truma. So you could say that a tvul yom is more stringent. Malatvuyim shekain, right? So ikal mifrach malatvuyim shekain avatuma. So you could say that it makes sense that a tvul yom is posel b'truma because a tvul yom is an avatuma, is more stringent in that it's an av hatuma. What's an example of a tvul yom? Azav, azava, mitzora, yoledes. These are people that at the end of their tumah, they go to the mikveh, and then they're a tvul yom, but they were an avatuma. And therefore, it makes sense to say that a tvul yom is posel b'truma because it's an avatuma, as opposed to this kikar sheni, which is not an avatuma. Maybe it's not posel b'truma. So the Gemara says, well, teisi mitvul yom de sheretz. Yeah, but what about the tvul yom of a sheretz? Right? If a person touches a dead sheretz, the dead sheretz is an avatum. He becomes a rishon tumah. He's not an avatum like the zav and the zava and friends. So in that case, it's not coming from an avatum, and yet it's still posel b'truma. The tvuyim will still be posel b'truma. So then the Gemara says, yeah, but still, ma l'tvuyim di sheretz shekain b'mino avatuma. But still, there's still a difference between the tvul yom of a sheretz and kikar sheni and this food and this chulin that's a sheni. The difference is that it makes sense that the tvul yom of a sheretz can be posel truma because a tvul yom is a human being, and human beings at least have the ability to become an avatuma. Have the ability to become an avatuma. What does that mean? And this is what my chaver Josh Weinberg asked Chat GPT, right? I posted in the Babylon Talmud chat my conversation with my chaver Josh Weinberg, that he asked Chat GPT, what did I ask him to ask Chat GPT? If food touches a corpse, does it become a rishon l'tumah? What does that mean? It means that only things that go in the mikveh can become an avatuma, right? So, right, it can become an avatuma. To become an avatuma, meaning if a human being touches a corpse, so it becomes an avatuma. If a metal vessel touches a corpse, it becomes an avatuma. Although interestingly, anyways, let's stick to a human being for now. If a human being touches a corpse, it becomes an avatuma. If food touches a corpse, food doesn't go in, there's not a type of thing that goes in the mikvah, it does not become an avatuma. And there's no other way for food to become an avatuma, right? It can't be a sheretz is an avatuma if it touches food, so the food becomes a rishon. Rishon obviously, food is obviously never going to be a zav, right? There's no way for food to ever become an avatuma. A human being, on the other hand, can become an avatuma. If he touches a corpse, he becomes an avatuma. There's also other ways for him to become an avatuma. So therefore we're saying, it makes sense to say that a tvul yom could be posel truma, because a tvul yom is a human being, and human beings can become avatumas, which therefore makes tvul yom stringent. And because it's stringent, it can be metame, right? And therefore, so the fact that a tvul yom is able to be metame truma, to be posel truma, that doesn't necessarily mean that food could be, right? Food that's a sheni could be posel truma. Because tvul yom is more stringent than food, in that tvul yom is a human being, and human beings can become an avatuma. Food can never become an avatuma. But klicheres yochiach. Okay, but then why don't you prove it from klicheres, that a klicheres cannot become an avatuma, because klicheres is not something that you could put in a mikvah. Klicheres, if it becomes something, you have to break it. So because the klicheres is not something that you could put in a mikvah, it also cannot become in avatuma, and therefore, and yet, if a klicheres can become a rishon l'tuma, a klicheres can become a rishon l'tuma, and a rishon l'tuma is able to be metame other things. Is able to be metame other things. And if a kli cheres that's a rishon, the tuma, touches truma, so it's going to be metame it, right? As a sheni the tuma, it's going to be metame it. And if it can be metame it, right? Metame means that it could transfer even onto other things. So if it can be metame it, then certainly it could be posel, which is less stringent, right? Which is less severe, because posel can't be metame other things. So if a kli cheres, which is not something that you could put in a mikvah, and therefore is not something that can be purified in a mikvah, and is therefore not something that can ever be an avatuma, and yet it could be posel truma. So therefore, it's not so crazy to say that food, which is already ochel sheni, which also can never be an avatuma, and also doesn't have a tire in a mikvah. So ochel sheni can also be posel truma. But malik klicheres shekem metame me'aviro. But klicheres is stringent in that it becomes tameh even from its airspace. If you take a dead sheretz and dangle it inside of an oven, of an earthenware oven, even if it doesn't touch the oven will become a rishon l'tumah, will become tameh. So that's a stringency when it comes to klicheres, and therefore it's not so crazy to think, okay, klicheres is stringent, and it can be metame, it can be posel truma. But tvul yom yuchech, okay, so then why don't you learn it out from a tvul yom who could be posel truma? V'chozer din, but then you say, yeah, but tvul yom is a person, and people can become avatumas. Therefore it's more stringent. Lo rizeh k'rizeh, lo rizeh k'rizeh. Look, tvul yom has its issues. Klicheres has its issues. But the common denominator between them is shemutarin b'chulin ufoslin b'truma. No, so you have to. So Rashi Taka reads this different. That the common thread between the tvul yom and the klicheres is that shetmein ufoslin b'truma. That they're both tmein and they are posel truma. Dennis, the reason why I switched around the words, it's confusing, is because Rashi does. So that's why I do it. Kol sheken kikar sheni sheposel b'chulin de posel b'truma, and then certainly a kikar sheni would also be so we say also that Kikar Sheni would be posel truma. Right? Kikar Sheni is tamei. It could also be posel truma. V'dor acher parich. Now, the Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai was concerned that the later generations wouldn't be able to learn out that the Sheni can make a shlishi, can be posel truma. How come? Because they would say parich. They would ask malatzad hashavish ben sheken yesh ben tzad chomer. That klicheres and Tevul Yom have a common denominator, and you can't learn it out from them because they're both unique in that they both have astringency, right? Klicheres is b'mitame b'fnim. Tevul Yom is able to be an avatuma. So if we can't learn out anything from those two because they both have their own stringencies, and that makes them unique. Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, tzad chomer lo parich. Whereas Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, doesn't consider that to make them so unique, the fact that they both have a stringency to them. And therefore, we would be able to learn out the commonality between them, the common denominator, which is that they are tamei and they're able to be posel truma. So also, Kikar Sheni would be able to be posel truma. Okay, friends, well that was Daf Chof Tes of Masechta Sotah. Hope you enjoyed. Peace out.